So today we are going to embark on a new journey, a journey which is going to take us to the highest goal. The highest goal we have already seen earlier, so those who have not attended the earlier classes, the ultimate goal is moksha or freedom. How to attain that is the question all of us don't know. Is the answer to that question which all of us don't know. So we are going to use the guidance of the Lord himself, Krishna, who is going to guide us through this journey to the ultimate destination. Before that, I would like to acknowledge the role played by my gurus, starting with my immediate guru, because of whom I am sitting here in front of you and able to teach Bhagavad Gita, Swami Anand Saraswati, whose guidance and whose encouragement helped me to share this knowledge with others. Because now knowledge has to be shared. And his guru, Swami Dayanand Saraswati, whom all of you may be aware, his main contribution is he has created teachers. Gurus can create students, but the guru who he creates teachers is a much bigger guru. Because a lamp is lit with another lamp. It's a continuous process. So from a teacher it has to flow. So a teacher has to produce a teacher for the knowledge to flow perennially. And this is a perennial knowledge. So that is why we started this thing with a prayer. Sadashiva Samarambham. The original teacher, Lord Shiva. Shankaracharya Madhyama. Somewhere down the line, Adi Shankara came and he has given us commentaries on all the Vedic texts, including the Bhagavad Gita. And incidentally, we are going to be guided by Adi Shankara's commentary, because that is what my gurus have taught me. So then down the line, Swami Dayanand Saraswati, and his guru was Swami Chinmayananda, whose role we have to acknowledge, because I would say because of him the world knows Bhagavad Gita better. Because he was the one who started teaching Bhagavad Gita in English. Those days nobody used to teach in English. And he took it to the entire world. So his role in taking this wonderful text called Bhagavad Gita to the whole world cannot be forgotten. And I should also acknowledge my late father, because he was always reading Bhagavad Gita every day. I used to see him read Bhagavad Gita. He was inspired by Swami Chinmayananda. I think he attended one of his first Bhagavad Gita lectures in 50s, somewhere long before I was born. And he had never told me to study Bhagavad Gita, or I used to take him to the class, drop him and come back. And I used to go and pick him up. But that was maybe 20 odd years back. At that time I never felt that I should also go in and at least listen to what they were trying to say. Probably if I had done that, 25 years of understanding Bhagavad Gita, my understanding would have been much better. But I think there is a time for everything. It happens only when your mind is ready. So, though he had not put any pressure on me to study, silently whatever he has done is, again, he has left me a load of books which I am able to now, that's the wealth he has left, which is now I am finding. At that time I never felt, I wouldn't have imagined I would be teaching Bhagavad Gita. I was not even ready to go to the class, but I have come to a stage where I am able to at least share the knowledge whatever I have received through my gurus. So I acknowledge all these people. I pray for their blessings so that this journey what we have begun is going to be a continuous journey, and all of us move together towards that goal. And we need the guidance of all our gurus and teachers who have shown us the way. Of course, our parents play a very important role. And last, if not the least, the Lord Himself, because He is going to be the guide. Because it is His teaching that we are going to see. It is not some author, some human being who has presented this Bhagavad Gita. It is the Lord Himself. So with this, let us move into the subject matter. Again, before actually going into Bhagavad Gita, we should try and understand the context. So let us just refresh our memory of Mahabharata, because Bhagavad Gita appears in the Mahabharata text just before the war started. So let us just refresh the memory, what led to that particular incident of a war happening, and which also gave us this text called Bhagavad Gita. So we will just go back. There was a kingdom based in Hastinapura, which was ruled by the Kuru kings, the Kuru Vamsha. The king at one particular time was Shantanu. You must have heard of Shantanu. Now Shantanu was a very great king. He married Ganga, and they had a son called Devavrata, who later came to be known as Bhishma. Devavrata was skilled in everything, warfare or everything. He was the ideal person to become the king after his father. But at a particular time, the king Shantanu fell in love with a fisherwoman called Satyavati. He wanted to marry her, but her father laid down some conditions that the child born out of her should be the king and not Devavrata. So Shantanu was very sad because he could not agree to that. And looking at his sadness, his son came to know that this is what had happened. So he went to the fisherman to ask his daughter's hand for his father. So the fisherman said, this is the condition. So he said, I vow not to claim the throne. I will not stake my claim to the throne. So the fisherman said, that's fine, but later if your children lay a claim to the throne, then what will happen to my daughter's children? So then Devavrata said, I vow not to marry throughout my life. So he made two strong vows. So because of those two vows, it's not easy for somebody to take vows like that. So because of that, he was known as Bhishma. So that is how Devavrata became Bhishma. And Bhishma, so after that, Shantanu married Satyavati, and they had sons. And Bhishma, incidentally, gave his full this thing to the throne. He said as long as he was there, he would protect the throne of Hastinapura. Whoever is sitting on the throne, he will never forsake that king. So they had some children, and Vichitra Virya was the one who was ruling after Shantanu. He had two sons, Dhritarashtra and Pandu. Dhritarashtra was the elder son and Pandu was the younger son. Now Dhritarashtra was born blind. Now there was a rule in those days that any person who is going to be a king should not have any kind of disability. So because of that, Dhritarashtra was automatically not eligible to become the king. So Pandu became the king. And Pandu was a very good ruler, and he gave great respect to his elder brother and took his advice in ruling because Dhritarashtra, even though he was blind, he was very learned and he was full-fledged this thing in all kinds of requirement that a king should have, but because of his disability, he was not the king. So Pandu ruled well. So he had two wives, Kunti and Madri. Now Pandu, Dhritarashtra had one wife called Gandhari. Now Pandu had a curse because of he happened to kill some deer which happened to be a Rishi couple. So the Rishi cursed him that he could not come in physical contact with any women. The moment he came in physical contact, he would die instantly. So because of this reason, he could not get children. He was very sad. But fortunately, Kunti, his elder queen, she had got a boon when she had served a Rishi in her younger life, and she had got a boon by invoking which she could get children. So using that, Kunti got 3 children, the eldest being Yudhishthira, who is the embodiment of Dharma, because he was born through the grace of Lord Yama, who is the Lord of Dharma also. The second son, through the grace of Vayu, Bhima was born, and through Indra, Arjuna was born. And she also taught this mantra to Madri, who got twin sons, Nakula and Sahadeva, through the twin god, the Ashwini twins. So that is how these 5 children were born to the Pandu family. So that is why, because they are Pandu's progeny, Pandu's children, they are called as Pandavas. And later, in a moment of weakness, Pandu got physical intimacy with Madri, and he died instantly. And his wife Madri also burnt herself on the funeral pyre, leaving the entire family in the hands of Kunti, all the 5 sons. So then these 5 sons were they were staying in a forest. They were all taken to Hastinapura and came under the guidance of Bhishma. So they all, so Dhritarashtra had 100 sons, eldest of whom was Duryodhana. Then you had Dushasana. So, and they had one daughter. So totally he had 101 children. But Yudhishthira was the eldest among all the cousins, so he was supposed to become the king. But once they all came together in Hastinapura, there was a lot of jealousy. Duryodhana could not accept these people as his brothers, so he tried his best to get rid of them, but somehow things went on. Finally, there was a time when they had to decide what to do, who will become the king. So they decided to, of course, a lot of things in between. We'll just stick to the basic things. So there was they divided the kingdom, making Pandavas the king of a place called Khandavaprastha, which was later renamed as Indraprastha, and probably this is what is the present day Delhi. So probably it is around that area. So the Pandavas, it was a very barren land which they were given, but through their hard work and skill, they converted this into a magnificent place, and they ruled very well. Yudhishthira being very just and very honest, and he ruled the kingdom very well. And they did Rajasya Yagya, and he became a Chakravarti. But all this was not liked by Duryodhana, of course. He was very jealous. So somehow he wanted to kill all these people and grab everything for his own kingdom. So then, if you remember, they invited them for a game of dice, and then Duryodhana's uncle Shakuni, he had this skill of throwing the dice where he could get any number he wanted, and then they all pledged all their wealth. Finally they pledged themselves, and then the condition was that they would be sent to the jungle for 12 years, and another 1 year they had to stay in a place where they could not be discovered, incognito, where if they were discovered during that 1 year, they had to again go back for another 12 years of jungle life, and again 1 year of. So there was a lot of drama which happened, how this Pandavas or the Kauravas insulted Draupadi. We all know what happened, how they treated her, but what was to happen had happened. So ultimately, though again the kingdom was given back, again they were called for a dice, and somehow Yudhishthira always had this weakness for playing dice, so he could not say no. Again they played, again he lost, and finally they had to go to the jungle. They stayed 12 years in the forest, and then they stayed 1 year in a kingdom where they assumed different roles where they could not be recognized. So we might have heard all these stories, which is, if we go back, it will become a Mahabharata story, but we have to come back to Bhagavad Gita. So finally, after all that, when these people came back, Duryodhana refused to give them the kingdom. Krishna went as a messenger. On their behalf, he requested first half the kingdom, and they said, we cannot give them 5 villages or 5 houses or 1 house with 5 rooms. Duryodhana refused everything. He said, I will not even give a pin space, even the tip of a pin, that much of space also I am not willing to give. So finally there was no choice. So the Pandavas had to fight for justice. So they had to, without any choice, ultimately trying all the other methods, they had to resort to a war. So each side, they picked their people. Duryodhana managed to gather people from different kingdoms. Pandavas on their own, they had their own friends. But Duryodhana's army was much, much larger than the Pandavas. They say even 4 to 5 times bigger. But the only main factor for the Pandavas was that Krishna was with them. Though they say there is a story again which both Duryodhana and Arjuna went to Krishna to request his help in the war. So Duryodhana happened to go first when Krishna was lying down, sleeping. So he waited for him, sitting near his head. Arjuna came later, he sat near his feet. So when Krishna opened his eyes, he first saw Arjuna. Though he knew Duryodhana is also there, and he knew why they had come. So he asked them, and both said they had come to request his help, his army. So Krishna said, on one side my army will go, other side I will go, but I will not take part in the war. I will not pick up arms. Now you can decide who wants which. So now who will ask first? Duryodhana said, since I came first, I should have the first say. But Krishna said, Arjuna is younger to you, so the younger one gets the first choice. So Duryodhana had no choice but to agree. So when Arjuna was given the choice, he said, I want Krishna. Even if he doesn't fight the war, I want him by my side. Duryodhana was very happy because he wanted only the army. Because Krishna without arms was no use to him, as per his thinking. So ultimately, Krishna's entire army went to Duryodhana, and Krishna himself came as a charioteer to Arjuna. So this is the background of this war. So finally, the venue chosen, like we have this cricket matches and all happening, we have a venue. So the venue chosen was Kurukshetra. Probably the terrain was good enough, there was enough water, because the soldiers and the animals, the horses, the elephants, all who were there in the war, they all needed to be fed, taken care. So Kurukshetra had a large lake. Even now today, that lake, people go and take a bath during certain auspicious days. So Kurukshetra was incidentally chosen as the field for the war. And finally, the war started, and the first day they all assembled, either side, one side the Kauravas, one side the Pandavas. Incidentally, Pandavas are also Kauravas, because they are also from the same Kuru dynasty. Just to differentiate, as Pandu's children, they are called as Pandavas. Otherwise, they are also Kauravas. So the Kaurava name comes from the word Kuru, the dynasty which ruled. So both armies lined up, and they were just preparing for the war to start. At that time, Arjuna told Krishna, who was his charioteer, please take me to the front between the two armies, where I can see the opponent's army. So Krishna, as instructed, as a charioteer, because there his role was a charioteer, and he had to listen to whatever Arjuna said. So he took and placed his chariot between the two armies, right in front of all the elders. Bhishma, Drona incidentally was the teacher. So at that time Arjuna got panicky. Not because he was afraid of the army. He was overcome by grief looking at all the people in front of him. He could see his revered grandfather Bhishma. He could see his revered teacher Drona. He could see all his cousins. So all the people whom he had grown up with, all in front of him, and he started getting panicky because he was wondering, what is the use of me living if I kill all the people who are my own people? So that was the first spark for the Lord to step in, and that is how Bhagavad Gita happened. And they say the time was still, because if you see this dialogue which goes on for a length of time, it is not that the others were just standing and listening to all this. So the time was still. So the dialogue between these two happened. The others, nothing happened. It was still. And incidentally, again, Dhritarashtra wanted to see the war, but he could not. He was given a choice to get those divine eyes through which he could see, but he knew ultimately what was going to happen, because he knew he was wrong. He didn't want to see the destruction, so he preferred not to see. So in his place, his minister Sanjaya was given the divine mission. So like today we watch matches on TV, what is happening in some part of the world. Sanjaya could see with his divine mission the entire Kurukshetra area, and he reported to Dhritarashtra as a commentator. So in fact, other than Arjuna, who listened to the Bhagavad Gita, Dhritarashtra and Sanjaya also could listen to Bhagavad Gita, because they were also witness to that. But unfortunately, Dhritarashtra's mind was not prepared for that, because if he had listened to that, he would have asked his son to stop the war. So that is how, when Arjuna became despondent, he lost his nerve, so to say, Krishna had to step in, and that is the scene set for Bhagavad Gita to start. So with this background, now let us understand what is Bhagavad Gita. So Bhagavad Gita, the name itself, Bhagavan's Gita, or the song of the Lord, that is what it literally means. So Bhagavan here is Lord Krishna, who is an avatara. Gita means a song. Now why is Bhagavad Gita a song? We will first let us understand what Bhagavan means. Because when we say Bhagavan, this name is very familiar. But what does really Bhagavan means? How does one get to be a Bhagavan? So Bhagavan means one who has Bhaga. Bhaga means sixfold qualities. Now, all of us may have these sixfold qualities, but we don't have them in total. We have a little of each, probably a small percentage of each of this. But the six qualities, one who has these six qualities in total 100%. He is known as Bhagavan. Now what are these 6 qualities? It starts with knowledge, jnanam. So the entire knowledge that is to be known is known to one who is Bhagavan. Vairagyam, total dispassion. He is not affected by anything. So that is another quality of Bhagavan. Virya. Virya means to capacity to create and sustain. So that is the 3rd quality. 4th is yashas. Absolute fame. Absolute fame which is not available to anybody else. So that is yashas. Shri. Shri means wealth. So the entire wealth that is available, that is why Lord Vishnu's consort is Lakshmi. So she was the goddess of health. That's why he had the entire wealth with him. And Aishwarya. Aishwarya is lordship. Total lordship. So he is a complete lord of everything. So the one who has all these 6 qualities in entirety, totality, he is called as Bhagavan. A lot of people are given this title Bhagavan, but we have to see whether they have all these qualities in total. They may have these qualities in some measure, but Bhagavan means one who has all these qualities in total. So Bhagavad Gita means Bhagavan who has all these qualities in total, and Gita means a song. Gita, it is not told as, it is not known as Gitam. Gita is feminine because Gita is a part of the Veda. So Veda is feminine. We call Veda Mata. So similarly, Gita is also feminine. So Gita is the song in verse form. Bhagavad Gita is in verse form. That is why it is pleasing. So when you chant it, you feel good. So anything in verse form is pleasing. It is in 2 meters. Anustub and Tristub. So these are the 2 meters in which Bhagavad Gita is composed. A meter is there are certain number of words or syllables in one verse. So any verse with those number of syllables and this thing, there is a particular meter. For example, the most famous verse is Gayatri Mantra, the mantra that we all chant. Now Gayatri by itself is not the name of the mantra. Gayatri is a meter in which this mantra is set. So that is why you have Gayatri for different gods. So actually the most popular Gayatri mantra that we all chant is actually Savitri mantra. But it is set in Gayatri meter because when you say meter, it's a measurement. When a particular verse has so many notes or syllables or words, then that is called a meter. So similarly, Bhagavad Gita is set in 2 meters, Tishtub and Anustub. Now what is the subject matter of Gita? Now we have understood what is Bhagavad Gita. Now what is the subject matter? The subject matter of the Gita is moksha. Bhagavad Gita is not a religious text. Unfortunately, it is being dubbed as a religious text. It is nothing to do with religion. It shows you how to attain freedom. So, our constitution itself, there are, like in the court, you can see people putting their hands on religious text and taking oath. Like if you are a Christian, you use a Bible. If you are a Muslim, you use a Quran, and a Hindu uses which actually Bhagavad Gita is not at all a religious text. It is a text which is meant for everybody. There is no religion attached to it. It just shows you how to live in order to attain that goal called moksha. It is applicable to every human being. You need not follow, you can follow any religion, but you can study Bhagavad Gita and attain that goal. Unfortunately, in our country where Gita is born, we are not being taught Gita. There are so many countries, Western countries, which have now made Gita as part of their syllabus. So, first we should understand it's not a religious text. It is Moksha Shastra, which is based on Vedas. So, Krishna has not, it is not Krishna's own version of the, he has just taken all the teachings of the Vedas and given us in a condensed form. Because the Vedas are very large, it's difficult for a single person to study and understand. In fact, as we know, there are 4 Vedas, and they are not attributed to any human being. They are directly received from the source, so to say. Like whoever has made this, like every product comes with a manual. This world was created, whoever created this world has created this manual called Veda. So only the maker can make a manual. Others cannot make a manual for somebody's product. So the Vedas are a manual, but it's a huge manual, elaborate manual. So probably at certain point, the Lord himself thought, let me make it easier for people. So let me give them in a condensed form. So an abridged manual which carries the main features of the main manual. So that is the reason Bhagavad Gita was born. Or the Lord, in fact, people also say that the very purpose of Krishna Avatara was to give Bhagavad Gita. It was not Mahabharata was important. To bring the Bhagavad Gita to the world, the Lord decided to go through historical this thing called Bhagavad Gita. Mahabharata. Though it is part of Mahabharata, but ultimately if you want to take away from the entire Mahabharata, it is Bhagavad Gita. So that is what was, so it is a Moksha Shastra. It is in dialogue form. The Vedas always, if we see, any teaching is in a dialogue. There is a Guru and there is a Shishya. So it is a Guru Shishya Parampara. So it is not a sermon. It is not preaching. The Guru conveys what he has learned from his Guru. It's a perennially flowing wisdom. So whatever he has learned, he conveys to his students. And the student listens, but he is also at liberty to question the teacher anytime if he does not understand anything. So there is absolute freedom to question till the student is convinced deep within that, yes, I have nothing more to ask. So that is the traditional teaching. So always it is presented in the form of a dialogue. Again, let us understand the different types of dialogues. There are 4 types of dialogues basically. First one is called as Vada. Vada means debate. So there is a particular subject, we must have seen debates on TV, and we must have also in our college days participated in debates. So there is a subject where one speaks for and the other one speaks against. Each one presents a point, and ultimately one of them is accepted as the right one. So the other one also accepts, yes. So from a debate we actually learn. We set our own point, but when we look at the opponent's points, we also agree, yes, whatever he said is also true. So finally there is an agreement that both of us learn something from that. The next type of dialogue is called Jalpa, where one person always says, I am right. Whatever I say is right. Whatever other says is not acceptable, which is not good for anybody. Nobody learns anything from it. The third one is called as Vitanda, where you oppose everything the other one says. So whatever, you don't accept anything that the opponent says. So that is called as Vitanda, which is again not a healthy thing. These two are not healthy dialogues because nobody learns anything from this. And the fourth one is called as Samvada, which is dialogue. So the Vedic texts are basically Samvada, a dialogue between a teacher and a student. So in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna is the teacher and Arjuna is his student. So the dialogue that happens between them is Bhagavad Gita. What does the Gita consist of? It has 700 verses in 18 chapters. Not that Krishna started chapter 1, gave us this thing, then completed chapter 1, now let us start chapter 2. It was not that way. The conversation happened between them. The author used his discrimination, that is Vedavyasa, who is the author of Mahabharata, discrimination, and made it into 18 chapters. These 700 verses were divided into 18 chapters. And you can say there are 3 sections of this. The first 6 chapters convey something, the second 6 and so there are 3 parts. Each 6 chapters convey a particular knowledge. So the first 6 we call it as Tvam Padam. That is, Krishna tells Arjuna what Arjuna is. He explains to Arjuna Arjuna's real nature. The next 6 chapters are Tat Padam. So Krishna tells Arjuna who Krishna is. He explains to him in detail about himself in the next 6 chapters. And the last 6 chapters are Asi Padam, or the equation. What is the connection between these two? The individual and the total. How do you equate these two? What are these? How are these two connected? So that is why, for convenience of understanding, you can divide the Bhagavad Gita into 3 parts. So Bhagavad Gita is also known as the 5th Veda because it contains whatever the Vedic knowledge has. So it is you can say an extract of the Vedic knowledge. So it can also be called as another Veda or the 5th Veda other than the 4 that we know. Now, like I said, Vedavyasa was the one who edited the 4 Vedas because the Vedas were in such a big form. So he put them into 4 sections: Rig Veda, Samaveda, Yajurveda and Atharva Veda. And he found that each Veda, for somebody to study and understand, it took about 12 years. So a person, if he had to study all the Vedas, it would take 48 years. And he has to start right from birth, probably he will still not be able to complete it. So Vedavyasa made it simpler by handing over each Veda to one family. You study this Veda, you study this Veda. So that is why, if you know, in North India there are many families with such names. Dvedi. The one who has learned 2 Vedas is a Dvedi. Trivedi, the family which knew 3 Vedas was called as Trivedi. The family which knew 4 Vedas was called as Chaturvedi, because some of them had the capacity to learn more than 1 Veda. But nowadays, maybe a Chaturvedi may not even know the meaning of Chaturvedi. So the entire thing was forgotten. So that is what Vedavyasa's role was. So that it is easy for people to study, and so luckily tradition is still kept going. There are a lot of Veda Pathshalas coming up, though they are not many, but the tradition is being kept alive. So we should thank whoever is promoting these Veda Pathshalas, because they have to start very young, and at that age it's very easy for them to absorb, because they don't have to understand the meaning, but they can memorize. So it is easy for them to absorb. So the students were taken at an age where they could easily absorb. So that is how the Vedas were kept going, so to say. Each one had to memorize the entire one Veda or two Vedas. So that is what Vedavyasa did. So this is the layout of Bhagavad Gita, the 700 verses, which we are going to see as we progress, because it's going to be a long journey, and we are going to be guided by the Lord himself. So if we follow whatever he is going to say, the chances of attaining that goal are very high. But there is no need to panic. Okay, I am already 60 plus, when will I be able to absorb all this, and will I reach that goal? So somewhere in the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna also asked the same question. Suppose I die before I realize this. So Krishna said, no need to worry. You will continue from wherever you let off in this birth. It's a continuous process. The life goes on continuously. You will start off from wherever you let off last time. So that is the assurance that the Lord has given. So with that assurance, we can also move forward. So now with his guidance, we can move forward and proceed in the path towards that goal. The more we stick to the guide, the guidance given by the ultimate guide, the chances of reaching that goal become very, very bright. Of course, we are bound by our own commitments, and so we stray away from that path. But as long as the goal is clear, once we fix the goal, then the Lord himself will help us to go through the path. It's not an easy thing, because it's the ultimate goal. You want to win the Olympics, you have to put in that much of effort. If you are planning to win the local race, that effort is okay. You can just practice for a couple of days and maybe win. But you want to win the Olympic medal, you know what kind of efforts you have to put in, what kind of sacrifices you have to go through. So we are looking at the ultimate goal. So the road is also going to be tough, but the Lord is there with us. As long as he is with us, we can absorb those tough things in our life and proceed, and continue in the next life also till we attain the goal. So with this we will stop today. We will next class we will start with the Dhyana Shlokam of Bhagavad Gita, because always we start with the Dhyana Shlokam. Then we will start with chapter 1. The teaching of the Bhagavad Gita actually the real teaching starts from somewhere in the second chapter. The first chapter is more of an introduction. It can be studied in many ways. In fact, Adi Shankara, I believe, has not written a commentary on the first chapter. So, because it's only an introduction to the Bhagavad Gita. So, somewhere the 11th verse of the second chapter is where the actual teaching begins. But we will be starting from verse 1. So, we will go through we'll come to know of the various characters. In fact, they say the Bhagavad Gita is the best book on psychology. All the characters, if we understand, we can understand all people around us, because each one we can relate to with a particular character from the Mahabharata. So you don't need to study psychology if you understand Mahabharata. So the first chapter is just understanding the characters, and so we will go through that. So before that, next class we will start with the Dhyana Shloka. So we will conclude today with a prayer.